How much does stardom at 17 really cost? When Lamine Yamal curled in a stunning goal against France in the Euro 2024 semi-final, the world stood still. Here was a 16-year-old kid not just surviving at the highest level, but thriving. Commentators hailed him as a generational talent, and rightly so. But beneath the wonder and applause, a more uneasy question loomed. Is he playing too much, too soon? The same question looms over Jude Bellingham. At 21, he's already Real Madrid's midfield linchpin, England's heartbeat, and one of the most marketable stars in football. But ever since he was a teenager, he has been playing high-pressure games every few days without too much of a break. These two aren't alone. Football's next generation is being pushed into elite-level responsibilities earlier than ever before. And while that might make for thrilling moments and highlight reels, history has shown that when footballers are overworked in their youth, the costs often show up in their late 20s. Let's take one case at a time, starting with the most sensational teenager on the planet right now, 17-year-old Yamal. Yamal made his senior debut for Barcelona at just 15. That alone would be enough to turn heads, but what followed was a whirlwind. By 16, he was a starter in La Liga, playing Champions League football and lighting up international tournaments for Spain. At Euro 2024, he broke multiple age records, including becoming the youngest ever player to score in the European Championship. But it's not just the brilliance, it's the sheer volume. In the 2023-24 season, Yamal played over 4,000 minutes for club and country combined. For context, that's more than any established pros and double what players like Fabregas or Foden were handling at that age. He's an incredibly special talent. His game intelligence, vision, and composure all scream once in a generation. But there's also the fact that he's still growing physically. Medical experts often warn against overloading players during adolescence as their bones and joints are still maturing. Repeating high-intensity matches can increase the risk of long-term issues, even if they're not immediately visible. It raises a tough question. Should we be enjoying Yamal's brilliance now while quietly fearing that his peak might arrive and fade too early? Now let's take a look at Madrid's midfield general. Jude Bellingham's career has been a lesson in maturity far beyond his years. He made his senior debut at 16 years and 38 days for Birmingham City, and within a year was starting for Borussia Dortmund. Since then, he's consistently gone up. At 17, he was bossing Champions League games. At 19, he was Dortmund's captain. And now, at just 21, he's a key player for Real Madrid and England. Numbers tell a worrying story though. In the 2023-24 season alone, Bellingham played more than 4,600 minutes across competitions, not including international duty. And that's close to what professional players at their physical peak, usually between ages 27 to 30, play. Now consider Bellingham's physical style of play: pressing, tackling, driving forward, which means his body takes a lot of this impact. Combine that with his relentless schedule and the emotional pressure of carrying elite clubs, suddenly the risk of burnout becomes more than theoretical. What sets him apart is his professionalism, recovery, routines, and mentality. But is even that enough to protect him in the long run? The football calendar today is more demanding than it has ever been. The modern game not only expects players to be fitter and faster, but also asks them to play more. A decade ago, a teenager debuting at 18 was considered very early. Now, it's almost late. Clubs scout and promote players at 14 or 15. The commercial pressure is enormous. With more international breaks, club tournaments, and pre-season tours, players barely get any rest. For a young body still adapting to the physical strain of adult-level football, this is a dangerous cocktail. Unlike a 28-year-old, a teenager is still experiencing rapid physical development. Overexertion at a young age is linked to reduced career length and increased injury risk. When teenagers don't get adequate rest and tailored physical development plans, they can peak far too early, both physically and mentally. This is not uncharted territory. Football's past is filled with examples of players who lit up the world as teenagers only to fade away in their mid-20s. The reasons vary. Bojan Krkić, for instance, was once dubbed the next Messi after breaking records at Barcelona. By 18, he had already played over 100 professional games, but by his mid-20s, recurring anxiety and fitness issues saw him fade from the top level. Alexandre Pato was another golden boy. He made his debut at 16 and was scoring for AC Milan in the Champions League by 18. But after a series of injuries in his early 20s, he never fully regained his edge. Ansu Fati, ironically from the same La Masia system as Yamal, exploded onto the scene at 16 too. But a devastating knee injury and persistent muscle problems have since slowed him down massively. He was trying to rediscover his form at Brighton in the 2023-24 season after being deemed surplus to requirements at Barca. This season, he has barely played for the club. There are other names too: Ravel Morrison, Adriano, Jack Wilshere, players who had the world at their feet at 17 but couldn't sustain it, largely due to injuries or external pressures that began piling up early in their careers. Each case has its own nuance, of course. Not every failure is due to physical burnout, but the pattern is too familiar to ignore. When people talk about burnout, the physical toll usually comes first. Minutes played, matches per season, injury history. But just as critical is the mental load these teenagers are expected to carry. Yamal isn't just playing senior football. He's doing it with millions watching, headlines sensationalizing every touch, and national expectations bearing down on him before he's even taken final school exams. Similarly, Bellingham is more than just a midfielder. He's the new face of English football. At Real Madrid, a club that demands perfection, he wears the weight of being a Galactico. And during the Euros or World Cup, he's expected to be England's leader. At 20, he already shoulders pressure that might break a seasoned pro. Players like Yamal and Bellingham are mature beyond their years, sure, but they're still kids, developing their identity under constant public scrutiny. The psychological strain of carrying so much expectation can lead to mental fatigue, anxiety, and eventually even a drop in performance. It's part of what affected Bojan, who later opened up about crippling anxiety attacks. Wilshere spoke about the pressure he felt at Arsenal to prove he was special every week. This kind of mental exhaustion, especially when built up over several years, has real consequences. One reason for cautious optimism is the top clubs are becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of overexposing young players. Clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona track everything from heart rate to sleep cycles. At Manchester City, Phil Foden was carefully introduced into the team, often frustrating fans because Guardiola insisted on protecting his long-term development. Barcelona have been more aggressive with Yamal, but insiders suggest they monitor his training loads closely, giving him rest days and limiting training intensity where possible. Spain's national team staff also revealed that during Euro 2004, Yamal was given modified recovery protocols and was only allowed to train at 80% intensity in between games. In Bellingham's case, Real Madrid often rotated him during congested fixtures. However, injuries to key midfielders and his sheer influence on the team meant he still played more often than not. His shoulder injury mid-season raised alarms, but instead of being rested fully, he returned quickly for key games. The issue isn't a lack of awareness, it's a lack of flexibility. With big clubs fighting on multiple fronts and national teams playing tournaments every summer, rest becomes a luxury. And the more talented the player, the harder it becomes to say no to using them. Not every wonder kid falls into the same category. Some young stars were managed more cautiously and as a result had longer, healthier careers. Think of Rooney. He was phenomenal as a teen and played a staggering number of games in his early 20s. And by the time he hit 30, he was already physically declining. Contrast that with Messi, who, although bursting onto the scene early, had his minutes managed carefully by Frank Rijkaard and later Guardiola. Cristiano Ronaldo was similar. He didn't explode until 21 or 22, and his early years at Manchester United were filled with physical development and rotation. Both Messi and Ronaldo had the advantage of being protected by clubs with long-term visions, and it paid off. So it's not just about the number of games, it's about how those minutes are played, what recovery looks like, and whether there's a support system in place. Another factor complicating complicating everything is how commercial football has become. Players like Bellingham and Yamal aren't just footballers, they're brands. Sponsors, broadcasters, and even clubs view them as global marketing tools. Every goal, every highlight, every social media clip adds to their value. And in a world driven by engagement metrics, resting a star player isn't always just a football decision anymore. There's also the competition factor. When a club like Barcelona sees Real Madrid promote a young gem like Arda Güler, there's pressure to show that their own academy is just as strong. National teams want to win tournaments now, not in 5 years' time. That urgency puts even more pressure on young stars to perform week in, week out. It's a vicious cycle. Talent leads to exposure, which leads to pressure, which leads to more playing time, and possibly shorter careers. As fans, we often assume that footballers will have 15-year careers, but maybe that assumption is outdated. If players like Yamal and Bellingham peak at 22 or 23 and decline by 28 or 29, is that the new normal? Could the age curve in football be shifting? Some data already suggests that the physical peak in modern football has moved slightly earlier. Players are faster and fitter in their early 20s than they were a generation ago. But that might also mean their decline could begin sooner, especially if they've already racked up thousands of high-stress minutes before they're even 25. If that's true, clubs and national teams might need to rethink how they plan careers. Perhaps fewer games, longer breaks, and smarter usage will be key to keeping stars on the pitch longer. Or perhaps the game will continue to burn through talent faster than ever, relying on constant waves of new teenagers to replace the ones who burn out. For now, both Yamal and Bellingham look unstoppable. Yamal is already being compared to Spain's greatest, while Bellingham could win the Ballon d'Or in the coming years. But both are also walking a tightrope, brilliant but overloaded, gifted but vulnerable. If we're lucky, modern medicine, elite recovery practices, and strong support systems will help them avoid the fate of Bojan or Pato. But history has shown that even the brightest lights can burn out if they shine too brightly too early. As football continues to push the limits of youth performance, we must ask, how much is too much? Are we willing to sacrifice long-term greatness for short-term magic? And are clubs and federations truly doing enough to protect these teenagers? Or are they just riding the wave until the next prodigy comes along? Only time will tell if Yamal and Bellingham defy the trend or become cautionary tales. One thing's for sure though, the line between brilliance and burnout has never been thinner. But what do you think? When will Yamal's prime be? And when will he decline? What about Bellingham? Let us know below.